So welcome, our brilliant colleagues, Xina and Benjamin. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity. And as always at SETC, we begin all conversations by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Xina, Benjamin, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work.
Thanks, Victor. B, how about you go first?
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak with you. My name is Benjamin Scott. I'm founding project director and co-lead alongside Xina of Entrepreneur. I'm a member of the Clecho Nation, grew up in the Decho, Clecho, and Quechua territories of the North, and have a deep passion for weaving together Indigenous knowledge systems and entrepreneurship in business.
And I'm Xina Cowan, and I'm the co-director at Entrepreneur alongside Ben. My heritage is Irish, Scottish, and Mohawk, and I was born and raised in Montreal, but I now get to live in beautiful Yukon on Kwanlin Dun and Ta'an Kwachan traditional territory. And similarly to Ben, really passionate about entrepreneurship from an Indigenous perspective and what it brings to the North.
Incredible. Congrats on stellar work. I really appreciate your consistent leadership. So my next question is, what's inspiring you both right now? What has you curious or what's keeping you up at nights?
Well, yeah, Ben and I were thinking about this earlier today. Ben actually got Entrepreneur off the ground with some support and with input from some really stellar Northerners about 5.5 years ago. And since then, we've had the privilege of working with over 200 close to 215 Indigenous entrepreneurs from across the North now. And I think what's been really exciting for us from the get-go is the opportunity to be creating spaces for folks who haven't had access to that space or those opportunities before. Entrepreneur is a project that, we have a lot of freedom to design programs and supports that are sort of for the North, by the North, and we've been able to create some really innovative solutions. So I think that's one of the things that stands out to me. B, you want to continue?
Yeah, like I think for us, a lot of what inspires us at Entrepreneur is just seeing those stories of transformation of the entrepreneurs that we work with. A lot of them come in, everyone comes in with a different story and a different trajectory. But what's sort of, there's a shared lived experience of sort of overcoming colonization, and a lot of people are going through healing processes and working to improve their own lives and their community lives. So it's just really, it's an honor to work with and witness these transformations. And we get really pumped about entrepreneurs doing great things. And so for us, it's always been about there's a lot of inspiring work around cultural reclamation of entrepreneurs and using business as a force for doing that work. And so for us, it's always about stories over numbers, and working deeper to enact the change that we want to see in communities and hopefully create impact.
That's beautiful. It sets you data is a love language for us. And we always say no story, no data, no data, no story. So definitely story over numbers sounds incredible. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you and your colleagues face? And what are some of the approaches you're taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
Go ahead, Z.
I was just going to start off by saying, like, Entrepreneur came about, and B can speak to this a little bit more, as an organization to create opportunities where social and economic gaps are the widest. And I think, especially in the last decade, a lot more attention has been paid to Indigenous entrepreneurship and social innovation within Indigenous communities. But I think a lot of folks still don't have a ton of knowledge about the North and what it means to operate a business or an enterprise in a Northern context. So it's important to remember that, we're not Toronto, we're not Vancouver, and there are certainly unique challenges to operating here in the North, and that's something that we've witnessed with the entrepreneurs that we serve, and also even as a Northern organization operating ourselves.
Yeah, I would say too, like another area that, so, access to business education, access to patient, equitable, non-extractive capital has sort of been some of the things that we've been honing in on. So in response, I think, in response to a lot of these barriers, we've been really doubling down on trying to offer Indigenous-centered business and entrepreneurship programming that is, resonant with the cultures that and the communities that we work with, and trying to work with past alumni to come back in and support us in facilitating that education. So and again, like with the intention of making sure that the programming that we offer is culturally resonant. And yeah, so and amplifying the voices of Indigenous entrepreneurs through Xina's podcast, Venture Out, and some of the impact videos that we've created in the past. And yeah, a lot of different things, a lot of different things that we're up to, but I'd love to share more about that. Z, do you want to?
Yeah, like I think at Entrepreneurth, we have a tendency to want to try new things. And when Entrepreneurth first got off the ground, Ben kicked it off with a flagship cohort program, which still exists. But our suite of offerings and services has grown because folks are coming to us and saying, and we also need this, and we also need that. So, for example, we're developing technology now in the North, and I think we feel pretty proud about the fact that we're able to build and design technology in the North, because that's really not a common practice up here. But we're building an app, which is, I would say, Ben's passion project at the moment. And it's an app that bridges connections for Indigenous entrepreneurs and mentors and potential investors who are all looking to grow and scale businesses for impact. And that app came about from us recognizing that a lot of the entrepreneurs we work with are based in rural and remote communities, and maintaining those connections with them and supporting their business development from a distance was a challenge. And so that's why we decided to create this app. And we recognize too that operating a business in a northern community can feel quite lonely and isolating. So this is also a tool to bring people together and keep those conversations going. And the interface of the app is the multi-directional business compass. I don't believe Ben mentioned that, but it is the framework for everything that we do at Entrepreneurth. And it's an Indigenous-centered business and programming tool that is really, it's a circular and holistic framework that we use. And yeah, it's pretty neat. And just to what Ben was saying before about us offering culturally resonant business education, that really is what it's about. B, do you want to chat a little bit about the policy circle and then the fund?
Yeah, I'll just share a couple other things that we're up to in response to some of the challenges that we've witnessed, and the challenges and barriers that we've witnessed entrepreneurs experience across the North. So one of the things that there was a lot of interest in us taking on is building an entrepreneur policy circle made up of alumni that will focus on developing policy solutions that help break down those systemic barriers for Indigenous entrepreneurs. So that's something that we're spearheading this year. And we're also, continuing work on developing a Northern focused impact fund that is intended to reimagine how capital is offered to Indigenous entrepreneurs, again, in ways that resonate with Indigenous worldviews, values, and ways of life. And ultimately what we're trying to do is create greater economic reconciliation and justice across the North.
Incredible. Thank you so much for all that context. I feel like you just shared some of the key priorities of the organization. Are there any other key priorities you'd like to share? Because I'd love to segue to my second last question. What's your ultimate goal, and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
Yeah, I would say, well, just on the priorities, we basically have 4 different priority areas. First one is about creating a culture of innovation that is rooted in Indigenous knowledge, Northern capacity, and restorative business practices. We also want to mobilize a community of change makers who are amplifying stories of entrepreneurship, innovation, Indigenous excellence. We also, another priority is to offer world-class business education and innovative spaces that are culturally resonant to Indigenous entrepreneurs and leaders. And our last sort of priority area is to secure long-term funding that flows impact capital into the North and uplifts those, catalyzing transformative change. Over to you, Z.
I raised my hand because there was one point that I had wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about some challenges, and I don't know if it's a challenge so much as just a reality, recognizing the effects of intergenerational trauma as a direct consequence of colonization and how that has impacted Indigenous communities all across Canada and certainly in the North. And that has really shaped how we approach the delivery of our programming and even the design of this Northern Impact Fund, and really sort of placing healing and community well-being at the center of what we do. So that to me feels like a priority that's sort of a through line in all of our work. And I think both Ben and I have recognized how entrepreneurship really is a process of healing for business owners, because it allows them to create something that centers their culture, that could incorporate language and traditional values and customs, and can really bring something of value to their community.
Incredible. Thank you. I'm really excited to just see the fund develop and scale because it's so needed. It's obvious. So, and the intersectional approach you're taking, not just to fund management and fund development, but to be responsive to community needs, I think is truly remarkable. So once again, I applaud your leadership. So what does success look like to you and your colleagues? And do you have an ultimate goal in mind? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, we have big visions at Entrepreneur, and success, I think, is about, for us, creating a movement of Northern Indigenous entrepreneurs who are innovating solutions to strengthen economic resilience and community well-being for generations to come. And we want to build entrepreneurial capacity and business practices that care for the land, water, animals. And we also want to spearhead investments into Indigenous businesses that deepen economic reconciliation and justice across Northern communities. So yeah, there's lots of work for us to do. There's a lot of change that we want to see, but I think there's a lot of motivation and momentum building to create this change. So yeah, Z, what does success look like to you?
Yeah, I think what's really powerful is to see the ripple effect of one entrepreneur in a community growing and developing their business. And building impact doesn't necessarily mean scaling in massive ways. I think if you were to ask a lot of entrepreneurs and communities what success looks like, it really does come back to that sustainable livelihood piece, and that allows flexibility and freedom to live the life that they choose, and to have time to be with their family and to practice their culture. So I think what we've seen in the last couple of years is this like this movement of inspiring entrepreneurs who are showing others that, you know, entrepreneurship is possible, whether it's something you want to be doing part-time or full-time. So we're just excited to see where that goes. And I guess for me too, like I'm excited for us to continue building bridges and connections with other Indigenous-led organizations across the circumpolar who are also looking at, you know, entrepreneurship and access to capital. Because I think, you know, both Ben and I feel that borders are sort of colonial constructs anyways. So it is neat to be a part of this like growing family and connecting with folks in Alaska and Greenland and, you know, the Sapmi, and yeah, just see where that bigger conversation goes.
Love it. Thank you. Really appreciate your candor and transparency and your visionary leadership. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Yeah, so it took us a couple of years, but you know, with a lot of care and thought and input from our advisory team, we at Entrepreneurth were able to put together a list of guiding values that we like to do our very best to adopt, and that we also share with the entrepreneurs we work with. So we noted a couple of them down today and thought that they would be appropriate calls to action. So the first one is be gentle to one another. You know, in business, in life, I think particularly at this time in history, that's important for us to be thinking about. And at Entrepreneurth, for us, that looks like striving for excellence while uplifting each other with dignity, kindness, and respect.
Ashe, that's beautiful. Ben?
Yeah, another important value that we try to uphold is just encouraging people to stay rooted in who they are, and we like to honor those the lived experiences, gifts, and teachings that we all carry into our work. And yeah, like we just have the privilege of working with so many talented and insightful people, and they, you know, constantly fuel our and motivate us on a daily basis to do better.
To action that we have is really encouraging people to adopt business practices that are sustainable. And I think that looks like upholding business practices that do demonstrate genuine care for the land, water, and animals. And we're, you know, seeing the effects of the climate crisis everywhere, but I think the North is feeling it acutely in different ways. And what is exciting about Indigenous entrepreneurship, I think, is the opportunity to be infusing Indigenous values to address some of you know, climate innovation solutions for some of our biggest issues around the crisis.
Okay, we have one more for you.
Two more.
Two more. Okay. Well, I think another one that we reflect on often, and you know, it requires the deeper thinking, is shifting systems that create harm. So, and really embracing ideas that promote greater self-determination and economic justice. And you know, those are big challenges. Those are big calls to action, and we really have to collectively think deeper about, you know, what we're doing that could potentially cause harm, perpetuate, you know, systemic racism, or deepen colonization that has affected a lot of our communities. So, yeah, we really just a big call to action for ourselves and for others is to shift those systems that create harm.
And our last call to action for today is really encouraging people to share and tell stories that inspire a better future. And I think that's, you know, very apropos with the podcast that you host, Victor, and all of the work that Setsi does. And I think that's really about amplifying narratives that inspire new ways of doing business where all of us have the opportunity to grow and benefit. And we've just witnessed time and time again the power of storytelling at Entrepreneurth, and how that can serve to educate and serve to inspire and really like let go of old narratives that are not serving Indigenous communities, that are not serving BIPOC communities, and create a new chapter.
Absolutely beautiful conversation and interview. I so appreciate your work, Xina and Benjamin. Like, I love your camaraderie, the solidarity, and yeah, just the consistency of your leadership and all the innovative tools, initiatives, projects, and large-scale legacy funds and communities of practice that you're building out. It's truly remarkable. And as always, it sets the, as we thank you, we want to give thanks to the original stewards, the various lands we're on. We want to give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We want to give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you both so much for all that you do for so many.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, Victor.